Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the Make Things Better podcast. Today I'm joined by Simon Cookson, founder of Northern Value Creators. Welcome on, Simon. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. It's a lovely sunny morning, so yeah, really good.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about communication, especially in the world of tech and developers and everything else. So do you want to start by telling us a bit about yourself and how you maybe got into helping people improve their communication in the world of technology?
Yeah, no problem at all. I've been working in tech for, probably about 25 years, I reckon. And we founded Northern Valley Creators nearly 6 years ago now. And we're a team of coaches and learning and development specialists that help subject matter experts, technical specialists, developers, anybody with a subject matter expertise become better leaders. And one of the massive areas that we talk about a lot is communication.
Yeah, and what have you found is like a barrier in communication? Is there any like barriers that you've found?
Yeah, absolutely. There's loads and loads of barriers to communication. It's often something that we think is easy because we do it naturally. We're doing it now. Yeah. We're just kind of talking, aren't we? We haven't got a script. We've not planned it out. We're just talking. So we kind of think, well, it's something I've been doing since I was about 18 months old. Yeah. So it's something I'm kind of pretty good at it. You can understand what I'm saying. I'm using words that you know what they mean. Yeah. So I think, I'm all right at communication. But when you introduce the world of work and the complexity of work, particularly when you work in the tech sector, that is, all the cliches about tech, fast paced, always changing, super complex, new technology, lots of specialist teams in different areas doing their own specialist thing, that's when communication gets a lot trickier. And I think one of the fundamental things I'd like people to have a think about when they listen to this is that we've got a choice. Okay, so all of us as individuals, doesn't matter what role that we've got, no matter how senior we are in an organisation or whether it's your first day, we've got a choice. And that choice is either we can communicate with each other in a way that makes work harder, or we can choose to communicate in a way that makes work easier. Okay, and that we all have that choice, but we often don't think about that choice because we're communicating. As I say, we think we know what communication is all about, and we just do it subconsciously. But I think what I try and encourage, and what we do at work, is we try and encourage people to be a little bit more conscious about their communication and think about that choice, about whether you want to make it easier or whether you want to make it harder. And I'm all for an easy life, so I'll always veer towards trying to make stuff easier.
Yeah, sure. So awareness is a big part of this then.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how important do you think communication is in technology in this sector?
It's everything. It's absolutely everything. And I think it's something that can get a little bit lost because you think about the technology sector. We call it the tech sector. We work in tech. Well, it's people-based business most of the time. Yeah. Because as I say, it's been my experience, as I say, most tech organizations are actually teams of individuals, teams of people, and trying to solve really complex stuff that, as I say, is always changing. Clients have got different requirements, customers have got different changing requirements all the time. There isn't a manual that you can just pick off the shelf and go, right, yeah, that's how we're doing this, because that manual either hasn't been written yet or it's been rewritten on a almost daily basis. So communication is the absolute thread that runs through everything.
Have you noticed in your time working any organizations where the communication has maybe not been so good and that's caused problems within those places and those teams?
Yeah, totally. A phrase that is often used, particularly in larger organizations, is the business. Yeah. If you hear teams talk about the business, then you know that there's a communication problem in the organisation because there's that separation, there's that silo stuff going on. So many times in my career, I've seen technical teams of developers, engineers, infrastructure teams, whatever, at loggerheads with product teams, or more traditionally, the enemy, marketing, the big bad team over in marketing. And, you get these conflicts, you get these silos. And I think at the heart of those problems is communication and how you communicate, because particularly when you're looking at teams of experts, you all have your own language, you all have your own priorities, your own biases, your own perspectives, and that comes out in how you communicate, how you interact with each other, the language that you use. And I think it's a massive challenge, particularly for technical teams, because there is so much jargon. But to you, within the technical team, it isn't jargon. It's the names of stuff. It's your everyday language. But for somebody coming in, being invited to a meeting, for example, where you've got to sort something out, coming to that meeting, if you are not part of that team, not part of that culture, that could be really alienating and really triggering. Because one of the big things that I want people to understand is that the words that we use, the conversations that we have, are chemical. So conversations are chemical.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that the way we communicate, the words that we use and how we use those words trigger certain chemicals in our brain. Okay. So we can use words that trigger positive chemicals, a chemical called oxytocin, which is the kind of good mood hormone, and it encourages sort of openness, trust, collaboration, more creative thought. Or we can choose to use words that trigger the opposite. Okay. And you flood your brain with a protection hormone, which is all about, oh my God, what the hell are they talking about? I feel really triggered here. I don't feel included. I don't feel listened to. I don't feel understood. I feel like I'm being excluded. So that's what I mean when I talked earlier about that choice. So we've got a choice in the words that we use and the way in which we communicate. Do we want to trigger those positive chemical reaction that will create collaboration and trust and openness, where people feel that they can say what they really want to say? Or do we want to communicate and use words that produce the opposite, that shut people down? And that's the choice that we've got, really, about choosing those different words. And it's something that we don't particularly think about a lot of in our day-to-day communication. It just all comes out, doesn't it? We just talk. But I think stepping back a little bit, thinking about the situation that you're going into, thinking about the conversation that you're going to have, think about the email that you're going to write, think about the audience and all of that sort of stuff, and just move into that space of being a bit more conscious of all of this will make communication so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. And people are going to respond differently chemically to the ways in which people interact and use their words. But how do you set up an environment, or what processes can you use to help understand how other people are going to react to your words, so that you can then use the right words and interact with them in a way that's going to produce those more positive chemicals?
There's a lot you can do, and a lot of it rests on preparation and understanding. So it's if you've got important conversations, you've got important meetings, it's about taking a little bit of time to think about who's the audience, who's coming, what do they know, what are their priorities, where are their biases, what's important to them, and if you don't know what the answer to these questions, then it's about going out and finding out. And the best way to find out is to ask questions. So I guess there's a couple of kind of hints and ideas that I'd like to share. So you can make that choice to have more positive, more effective communications. And the first one of those is quite simple, but it's about ask more than tell.
Yeah.
So that is the absolute, if you can, in more and more of your conversations, if you can do more asking and thinking of questions, going into conversations, preparing to write emails, what kind of questions can I ask? What would be, we're talking about this particular topic, we've got this challenge we want to overcome. If you can sit down and prepare some questions. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to write a script and you've got a piece of paper in front of you and you've got a list of questions that you're running through. So you're not doing a survey, but just do a little bit of thinking in advance and think about what kind of questions that can ask. Because questions are an absolute superpower. Because if you want to communicate in a way that makes other people feel better, included, makes the flow of information much easier, makes work easier, as I said at the very, very beginning. Questions are a brilliant way to do that because they immediately include the other person. If you're asking somebody a question, you're immediately included. And the other thing that makes it a superpower is that it forces you to listen, because that's the other big thing around, how do you do this? You need to listen.
I'm guessing when you're asking questions, they need to be quite open as well.
Open questions are always really good. Always really good. So if you can, when you're thinking about questions, take your perspective out of it. Frame the question, come at it from the point of view of discovery and curiosity. Because one of the worst things that you can do that'll shut down a conversation, that'll make the other parties feel uncomfortable, not listened to, is if you come at it with too much ego, or come at it from a place of knowing, is a phrase that we often use. I already know the answer to this, but I'm just asking the question because I feel like some bloke on a podcast told me asking questions is a good idea. That's not really the spirit of it. If you need to stay in that place of curiosity and discovery, even if you've got an opinion, that's fine to have an opinion on things, but you need to ask the question and frame the question in a way that stays in that space of discovery and genuine interest in what the person's got to say. I think one of the worst things that I see, and have seen over the years, is where you're working on a project, or there's something that needs to be done. There's a big challenge that needs to be overcome. So what do? You organise a meeting. That's brilliant. Yeah, organise a meeting. We'll invite someone from that team, someone from this team, someone from that team, someone from the other team. We'll shut them in a room. We'll get the whiteboard out, all of that stuff. And that is all right. But if you don't spend the time preparing for that, if you don't think about how you're communicating in that kind of meeting, those meetings can be utterly worthless. And you all come out of it thinking, well, that was a complete waste of time. We haven't progressed anything. Nobody's listened to me. I haven't felt heard. And that's because you're just bringing your preconceptions and you're not approaching it from that place of curiosity and that place of openness and that place of inclusivity. And I think that's where, if you can stay in that curious, inclusive space, then that is fantastic.
Yeah. Do you think there's a reason why people find it hard to get to that place of curiosity rather than just like projecting their own thoughts and ideals as to how to solve a problem?
Absolutely. I think part of it is a sector problem. We can get obsessed with delivery, pace of delivery. We're all really busy. We've all got a load of stuff that we need to do. So the focus is on doing it as quickly as possible. We've done this before. This project's like the last one that we did. This challenge is just like the one that we did last year and we solved it this way. So let's just do that. So that's a bit of a kind of sector problem. The other problem that we have is when you're in that scenario where you've got that meeting and everybody around the table, generally everyone's an expert in their own field. So you know what the answer is. Well, let's do it like that. And you're walking into the room, and I think this, I've seen and heard this particularly from technical experts, developers, engineers, and so. Well, I know what the answer is. I know how to solve this problem. Why the hell are we having another meeting about it? Why does marketing have to come along? Why do they have to come along? Why do they have to come along? Because I know what the answer is. You just do that. And not saying that that's wrong, but what you're missing from that is the perspectives from everybody else. What you're missing from that kind of approach is bringing everybody else along on the journey. And that is massively important, because all of the representatives of the different parts of the business need to be working together, collaborating and moving together, because that's how you actually deliver high quality stuff at pace. That's why staying in that place of discovery and actually being genuinely interested in the opinions of other people and how they might be able to change your mind or something, or add something in to the equation.
So do you think it's important, when you already feel like you know the answer, do you think it's important to kind of put that to one side and still be curious about what other people maybe think an answer is, but also get their opinions and views on it?
Absolutely, because I think in today's world, there are no easy answers. There are, as I said earlier, there is no manual that has all the answers in. That if you just do A, B, C, D, and then it's sorted. World's not that simple, particularly in tech. World is not that simple, and I think we need to solve complex problems. They're complicated answers, complex problems, and it's about solving those problems in the best way possible for clients, for customers, for users, whoever, whatever we're creating, whoever the end user is. It's about creating things that work for them, and that's hard. And the best way to do that is to get a wide perspective on things. And if you think you know the answer to every single situation all the time, you're going to miss stuff. And the other thing that's going to happen is that you're going to stay in a particular place. So if you keep reusing the same solution because it worked last time, you're standing still. And, I've been involved in organisations like that were absolutely at the top of their game, technically, commercially, really successful organisations that thought they were the bee's knees, that stayed in one's place, didn't have that sense of curiosity, didn't seek different perspectives. 3 or 4 years down the line, dead in the water.
Yeah.
Because you've stayed still.
Do you think without curiosity, anyone or company, an organisation, a team, do you think they can still grow without curiosity? How important do you think that is in communication and just a skill in general, really?
I don't think any organisation, commercially or otherwise, whether it's I'm kind of thinking now, socially, family unit, workplace, whatever it is, you need that curiosity. Because if you're not curious, you're not growing, you're staying still. And I think, if you're staying still, you're just slowly reducing your perspectives, reducing your interaction with the world, reducing your opportunities. One of the central things in our organisation, we've got 3 central beliefs, and one of those is that we can all change. We can all change, we can all grow, we can all learn. And curiosity is at the heart of that, particularly when you're dealing with experts, where that kind of their expertise is central to their identity and their value at work. So yeah, curiosity is massive.
What do you think can hold people back from being more curious? Is there perhaps a fear of change there, or anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a fear of change. There is a fear of loss of status. I think, again, in the tech sector, there's a real thing with experts, developers, that whole awful thing about the rockstar ninja developer that we pay, ridiculous amounts of money to. We're always searching for that kind of, perfect person that will just come in with all of the knowledge. And where you've got an industry that's based on your status in the team, in your organisation, is based on your knowledge, If you put your hand up and say, I don't know, that's really exposing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think, it is hard to stay in that space of learning and growth and change, but it's absolutely massively important.
How important is it to create a culture where people can be vulnerable so that they can admit, like, I don't know this, I don't know that, and therefore be more curious?
It's something that is not uncommon to hear people say, but it's really hard to do. And it needs everybody in the organisation, particularly those in their organisation with lots of status. So they're like senior people, line managers, that kind of thing.
Do you think they need to like set an example then?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You can't sit in an ivory tower at the top of an organisation and say, you lot down there, be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Bring your whole self to work, be authentic, and then just close the office door. No, you've got to do it first. And everyone's got to see you doing it at the top of an organisation or at the top of a team. And then people will follow and go because they know it's safe to do it. They've seen you do it and not get knocked down for it, not get criticised, not get ridiculed for it, not be penalised for saying, I don't know. And therefore, they'll see it's safe and therefore they'll do the same. So yeah, that's got to be something that comes from people with status in an organisation.
Does that happen often? Do you see like leaders in organisations opening up and being vulnerable about their weaknesses?
Not enough. There's plenty. There is plenty of it, and I think over the last 2 years, COVID, lockdown, home working, all of that, blah blah blah. One of the big benefits of that is there has been more humanness, if you like, at work. All the cliches about cats crawling across your keyboard and Zoom meetings and all of that stuff. I think it's been really good for that. We've left some of that old view of professionalism behind, I hope, where you've got to leave your emotions at the door, you've got to look a particular way, you've got to dress a particular way, which was all wrapped up in professionalism, where actually it was all just wrapped up in exclusion. It was all just designed to exclude people. If you didn't look, sound, think in a particular way, we're going to exclude you. So I hope that some of that has started to disappear.
Yeah, one thing I've definitely taken away from this chat so far is I found it really interesting how, I asked you before we started, like, how should I kind of introduce you? And like, you were a lot more focused on like, just introduce me kind of as Simon, rather than like, I don't really need like any like big title or anything like that. And then, talking about like the tech industry, and then again, you're bringing it back to like the people, like they're at the center of it. It's like the team. So I guess that's kind of maybe partly why the communication side of things just is so important. And then again, talking about like the business and how that can be like a bit of a barrier as well, and how that's kind of shown a certain side.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, it's really interesting to hear. But in terms of like developers then, I know we've kind of touched on quite a bit already, but how do you think developers specifically can communicate more effectively? That's quite a broad question. But
No. I think that's a great way that if we can kind of wrap this up on that. Well, okay, that all sounds great, but what can I do?
Yeah.
So I've talked about that, asking more than telling. I think that's a massively important one. The other one is try and minimize the use of the word why.
Yeah.
Which sounds a bit weird because why, we've been talking about curiosity and discovery.
Yeah.
Why is a word that kind of jumps into your head.
Yeah.
But why can be a little bit triggering.
Yeah.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that might work? Try and use something like a phrase like "tell me more." You're like, oh, Tom, could you tell me more about this, please?
Yeah.
And it just opens the conversation rather than going, why?
Yeah. Because it's really interesting that you say that. So I've been doing Samaritans training the last few weeks as a listening volunteer, right?
Right.
And there's like you got like 5 questions, like, the how, why, how, what, when, where, blah, blah, blah. And they said specifically, the only like word not to use is why. And they talked about that for quite a while. That was like a good half an hour of the chat. And it was like, because why can, as you say, it can be triggering. And it can kind of sound like you're pointing the finger at someone.
Kind of, Puts people under pressure instantly. So that's a real, try and it's not that why is an awful word. It's just in certain circumstances, if you can avoid it, use something like "tell me more" is better. The other thing which you might have picked up from listening to this, I can talk a lot and I can fill spaces. And a really good tip to avoid talking too much is an acronym WAIT, which stands for "Why am I talking?" If like me, you can talk too much, what a really good thing is just think about WAIT. Why am I talking? And while you're doing that, if you put your teeth together and push your tongue to the back of your teeth, it just stops you. You can't talk.
I'm trying it now.
Can't talk. So just think, just stop, wait, think about why am I talking? Okay. And then that just gives the other person that chance to come in, because to equalize the airtime a little bit. And finally, where I'd like to finish is 2 really, really brilliant words to use in lots of different conversational communication settings, particularly if you're trying to problem solve. If there's something we don't know the answer to and you're trying to problem solve. And those 2 words are yes and. Okay. So you can follow on. So someone maybe suggests an idea that you go, I know that won't work. So rather than saying, nah, that won't work. No, that's a rubbish idea. It won't work because it didn't work last time. It's not going to work this time. If you can say yes and then take it in a different direction or add to it, people don't feel dismissed. People don't feel shut down. People don't feel unheard. And there's a really great little game. You want to do a little icebreakery type thing. It's the yes and game. Suggest a scenario like, right, we need to build a new house. And one person suggests something. The next person says yes and then adds to it. And you keep going round and round and round. And what is beautiful about that is not necessarily where you get to, because it can be nonsensical. I once played it and we had like some sort of theme park run by penguins. But the important thing of the yes and as words and as the game is that it feels brilliant to be part of the conversation. The content of the conversation is not important. It's how you feel. And that is a really important takeaway about effective communication for anybody, is that people will forget what you said, but they never, ever forget how it made them feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's a quote from Maya Angelou. And I think that is, if there's one thing you can remember from today, it's about, what you say will be forgotten, but the way you made someone feel when you said it, they'll never forget that.
And yes, and.
There you go.
So, yes, and I do actually think that's a really good tip, because it kind of just keeps people involved.
It does. Keeps it moving. It moves it forward.
Yeah, and it's about including people, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. All right, final question for you. Actually, before the final question, do you think we've covered everything that you wanted to talk about today?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Brilliant. So final question for you, Simon. And interpret this however you like, as I say. What can people do to make things better?
I think people can be more, or could be more, conscious. So this kind of relates to what we've been talking about, be more conscious in the way you communicate. But it also applies more widely to your life, to your relationships, to your family, to what you buy and what you use and everything. Just be more conscious. Think about, what's the impact am I having? What's the impact of the words that I'm using? What's the impact of my actions? What's the impact of me buying this other thing that I probably don't need?
Yeah.
So be more conscious.
Do you have any tips on how to implement that?
Oh God, that's a hard one. And I guess to be more conscious, you've got to take more time. So that's that finding time, pausing, reflecting, and just thinking.
Okay. Awesome. That's a brilliant answer. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you? on like social media? Or anything like that?
Yeah, Northern Value Creators. We're pretty active on LinkedIn and on Twitter. They're our main kind of social medias, and then northernvaluecreators.com is our website.
Perfect. I'll hopefully leave some links or something somewhere. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
you. All right.
Yeah. Thanks so much for watching or listening, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.